Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Representative Gary Hopper, and this is Josh Solomon.
How you doing, Gary?
The great Josh Solomon, the great.
The great Josh?
The great.
I don't know where that came from.
I just said it.
We had a good
And
day yesterday,
if
didn't
I
we,
said
Gary?
it, that's all that counts. And I guess what else I saw yesterday, Monday. Guess who I saw?
Who?
Victoria Sullivan.
You saw her on Monday?
I saw her on Monday.
Oh.
That's how I got her on the show on Wednesday.
Oh.
'Cause
Hey, wait a minute. Today's Wednesday.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that means we have Victoria Sullivan with us.
Yes, we do.
Hi.
So I was picking on your police chief today.
What did he do?
We had a bill in, for some reason, Representative Neil Kirk from Ware isn't actually in the legislature now, but his bills make their way in there anyway.
Well, it's a citizens legislature, so you still have to put in, like if I bring forward something, and someone did help me get in a bill this year, you have to still put it in. Which as a legislator, as you know, can be difficult because if I don't believe in the bill that the person is asking to bring forward, I still have to bring it forward, which
Well,
can
that's
mess
not,
with
you
my
don't
liberty
have to,
rating
but
too.
it's a good thing to do, but not necessarily have to. Like, in other words, I'll give you an example. If somebody came to me and wanted to make some pro-abortion bill,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not introducing it. Find somebody else. It's because it goes against my moral core. Or if I thought it was an anti-Second Amendment bill, it goes against my constitutional core. So no, I'm not.
So
doing
how many representatives are there and where?
Tree.
So
Four,
they
actually
would have
four.
to find somebody else
Three
in
and a
where that
floater,
would do
right?
it.
3 and a floater. But anyway, so he had a bill in about trying to eliminate the recognizing people with the videotaping on Elm Street, which is, the police chief came in and said, well, we're trying to control crime and this is really effective. So I asked him, I asked him 2 questions.
How does it control crime?
Well, no. So if that's your justification, that means you really want cameras all over the city. Constant monitoring everybody going in and everything they're doing, right?
Right.
And he said, he can't afford that. He didn't say he didn't want it. He just said he can't afford it
But how does it control crime?
because they can watch people as
Commit
they
crimes.
commit crimes and then
So it doesn't
arrest.
control it. It just helps them solve it.
It helps them solve it. So if you're solving crimes that let's give them the benefit of the doubt 100% of the time, that means that there's that fewer people committing crimes. But if you're prosecuting them. But the thing is, what liberty do you give up doing that?
Not with our bail system that we have right now, the bail reform. They get right back out on the street.
But anyway, you understand my point. Basically, yes, you could monitor everybody all the time. You could have a system like China where they have billions of cameras, and everybody would be well behaved, but you wouldn't have.
So when this first came out, because businesses can have their own cameras.
Yes.
Private companies can have as
Yeah.
many cameras as they want to have. And when this first came out, there was a question as to, and there was a lot of confusion. Is the camera going to face down Elm Street? Is it going to be trying to look at people that are just, going about their business? And we were told, no, that was misinformation. It's just going to face down the building because there were some things happening in the back of the alley to protect the building, which I think most people would say, well, if there's things happening to the building that the taxpayers are paying for, I can sort of see having a security camera there. If it's up and down Elm Street so you can see people just going about their business, that's
must
a
be,
very
'cause that's-
different thing.
Well, where are we talking about mounting this? On City Hall?
It's already mounted
It's
on
mounted.
this. It's already mounted.
But on City Hall, not on one of the other buildings like
Right,
Liberty Cell,
right.
which is a private building.
Right.
But he
So
did not.
It's a city building.
Right. So that's now monitored by the
Okay.
government, which is different than having private
But he did
cameras.
not make that argument that it's only facing down, and he would have had it not been. But the other thing I said, I was a jerk. I said, "Are you being paid to sit here today?" He said, "Well, not getting paid, but I'm on the clock right now. If that's what you mean,
So he's getting paid.
he's getting paid." So I think that's wrong.
Right.
If he really believes in this, okay, go up there on your own time. But right, as far as I could tell, he's getting paid by the taxpayers of Manchester to go up there and fight against them. The other thing too is I said, Well, how much, if this is all up and above board, how much public observation is there of it? In other words, can any citizen go in and watch those same cameras to make sure,
Right.
You're not recording people or tracking people going into businesses and things like that? Well, they can file a 91A request, he said. Yeah.
But they don't even keep them
And
that
how
long,
long
right?
will that take?
Right.
Yeah,
By
how
the
long?
time they process that, the footage isn't there because I don't think they hold on to it forever.
Oh, I don't know. That's another problem. Do
Right.
they hold on it for forever, or do they just hold? Now, if they're just like deleting it immediately, that's actually better.
Or
But
every
if they're-
24 hours, I think.
I mean,
most
if they're
places.
holding on it, a crime is committed and then they hold on it for a trial, that's one thing. But if they're keeping track of who's going up and down the streets in Manchester, that's a violation of your liberty.
I agree.
But anyway, so I was picking on your police chief today. I
He's
just
a good
wanted to-
guy, too. I just disagree with
I'm
him
sure
on
he
some
is.
things.
Well, the thing is, it's motivation. Okay, so
Right.
I think he's probably a very nice guy, also, and he's trying to do his job, which is collect every criminal and catch every criminal in
Right.
the world. But you have to balance between what you're willing to sacrifice for liberty.
It's the same thing with the scrambling, and he and I have discussed it in the past. So in Manchester, you can't hear the police speaking to each other on radios anymore. It's all scrambled. So like,
So it's like talking to my wife, really.
Hi, Brenda.
not going there. So we've had instances in my and I live in a good part of the city, but it's a thoroughway. Like there's a lot of traffic there, so things happen sometimes. In Walmart, they put down the end of the street, so now we have more crime in my neighborhood than we used to because there's a lot of theft coming from Walmart. They take stuff, they run through the neighborhoods to get away, right?
Right.
But we've had instances like my kids were outside playing right after Christmas. They got all airsoft stuff. So they're outside. They've got black helmets on. They've got all their garb on. They're out there shooting each other in the backyard, having a great time. And someone in the neighborhood posted there were police everywhere. And then bits and pieces of information start coming in like, well, there was a robbery. They're looking for armed people. And I'm like, get in the house. Because if the cops are coming up through the neighborhood looking, these kids who are, they're teenagers, right? So now they're almost my height. They look like they've got guns and they're in the backyard, which should be something completely safe for them to do, but not if people are running through our yard looking for the bad guy.
Right.
But now I don't know because I don't have a scanner to see what's going on or where they're at. I'm just getting bits and pieces of whisper down the lane game from my neighbors who are getting bits and pieces. And that's not safe for my family. I can't protect my kids that way.
Right.
We've had other things where there were criminals outside that were armed and we didn't know because the police were like looking for them. We found out after the fact, and my kids were outside playing where I would have brought them inside. I had someone that was arrested on my front lawn the other night, and I don't know, were they dangerous? Were they just intoxicated? I have no idea because that information is no longer available to me, and it's my job to be my family's first responder.
That's really weird because see, on my house, if somebody was passed out on the front lawn, they'd be dead by the time I woke up and looked at them.
Well, the police
would
came and
freeze
got
to
them. They had been walking up the street, and I'm not there. I live on a main road.
I think in general, any type of surveillance like that is either hidden, not publicly available, or scrambled, right? So you get your scrambled police audio, right, going around, and then you've got this new publicly funded camera that nobody can look at unless they file a FOIA request, right?
Right.
Any type of recording or surveillance like that is subject to being messed with, right? Because we as citizens, we're paying for it.
Yep.
It's our surveillance, it's our audio, right? But when we ask for a copy of it, a transcript or an actual file, audio file or video file of it, the folks who are involved with it have the opportunity to scrub it.
Well, and I
You
spoke
know what?
with
Our
the
camera
chief.
wasn't working that day.
I spoke with the chief about the
that
scrambling.
That black mark there, that's for security reasons.
That actually
right?
happened to me.
And that happens all the time.
You got it. It was redacted.
No. Okay, so years ago we had a petition warrant article in Ware to have our police chief become an elected police chief because he was just completely out of control. the police chief of Ware, New Hampshire, went up to the podium, and if you look at background checks, they're different paper than regular. A background, if you do a background check, it comes out in an 8.5 by 14. It's one of those elongated legal documents. He came out with a stack of them and said if you would check the background of the people that signed this warrant article, they have records as long as my arm. So he implied that he did background checks on everybody
That was gonna vote.
that signed that petition.
He's not a nice guy.
Well, that's illegal.
Yeah.
That's illegal on many, many fronts. Guess what happened to the videotape that's always taped?
It
It
disappeared.
disappeared. There was a malfunction.
And
So-
I don't think our chief is that way. I don't. I've met
I
him.
don't
I
think
think
so
he's a
either.
really good guy.
He seemed like a nice
And
guy,
when
but I wasn't going to
But
let him
the
No,
opportunity
and when I
was
talked
there.
to him about the scrambling, he said that I brought up points that his job is to protect his guys and to protect the people in the city. My job is to protect my family.
Right.
Right. So I think that there's common ground there where we could work together and make it. They've always had the ability to scramble certain things, right? And the reason they started scrambling it here was because there was a gang that was actually listening to where the police were, and they figured it out. They charted it out. They figured out where they were, and they went after some of the officers.
Okay.
And they shot at them, and it was a really dangerous situation. Those people have since been arrested. It's not happening anymore. So now it's time to get back and say, how do we work together? Scramble what you need to, the names of minors, certain other things that they've always been able to scramble, and still let me have the information that protects my family. Because I think that there's a compromise that has to happen there.
What if members of the public were able to get like a descrambler if you have a residence or something?
I don't know how it works. I don't know how you descramble that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a piece of hardware that has a code, and it's hardware scrambling, right? That's why they are able to speak on the radio without any hindrance between them. They have on each end there's the encryption in the hardware, and it can be turned on and off. And you're absolutely right. It should be turned on and off based on the material that's, if there's an incident
Or
taking place.
The threat.
Yeah, there's a threat or an incident taking place. Okay, everybody's got to go scramble, right? If we're just on patrol and whatnot, then it really shouldn't be scrambled, right? Because if there's something that's going on, we as citizens want to know about it so that we can
Yeah.
either avoid that area or lend some sort of help, right?
Right.
And
And, in the case, like when my
we're
kids were
kinda
outside
reduced
playing in
to-
all their garb, it would have been helpful to the police for me to bring them inside so they weren't part of the confusion of the people they were trying to get to.
Right.
Right. So that's the kind of information we can actually help
Right.
each other out and keep each other safe.
Or if the kids were up the street too far away from you to get them back in, you could call the police and say, hey, my kids are up there playing Nerf, and I get all that crap on, so be careful not to
Right.
shoot
Yeah.
little children that are
So-
acting like children.
So I subscribe to, on Facebook, you can have you can subscribe to certain pages. So there's Manchester Alerts.
Yep.
right?
Manchester
So the-
Information.
Manchester
Yeah.
Information. And so that's where I get my information, but it's usually
They
an
get-
hour old.
Right. So
I mean,
they
it's
only
it's
get
old
theirs if
information.
the fire department
Right.
is, because the fire department's not scrambled, so you can still hear that stuff. And the police, I think, post every half hour. So by the time you're getting it,
Right.
too
It's old
late.
information.
yeah, it's old information.
Is that what you wanted to come on and talk about?
No, that's what you wanted to talk about, apparently. And
Oh,
how
what
your
did
wife
you-
doesn't
you-
listen to you. Do we need to have a session?
We should, yeah. Hey, so it wouldn't help. So
See, I think men have selective hearing. In my house, it's the men that have selective hearing.
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, exactly. I was
So
like,
basically, everybody but you.
right. Well, my husband or my kids will say, "What?" when I'm done telling a story, and they've decided that it might be interesting enough to hear, and I have to tell it a second time if they've
Yeah.
deemed it.
Well, you've had your
worthy.
practice. You can tell it better the second time
It's hard
around.
being the only woman in the house.
It
Even
is.
my
My-
dog is a boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. You're so abused. Hey,
That was-
so no. That's the big news. The big news is, so in case you didn't follow it, so we were at the Trump rally, absolutely packed.
packed.
There was, I don't know, thousands of people out front that couldn't even get in, and they were having a good time. And
I think they come with an expectation of, I might not be able to get in, and we're just going to make the best of it.
a guy in Ware was talking to me at the polls Tuesday, and he said, He just showed up at 6 and enjoyed the party outside instead.
Only in New England. It's rainy, it's miserable,
yeah.
it's cold, and they're having a party outside.
Yeah, yeah. And the really cool one was Tuesday. There was a guy who came up to me because I'm holding the Trump sign like a good loyal soldier, and the guy came up to me and he had to be in his 80s, very tall guy with a Navy cap on, and he said he hadn't voted since 1970, and this is the first time it was worth registering to vote because he wanted to vote for somebody.
Who do you want to vote for? Do you tell
Trump. That's what he's talking to me.
you? Nice.
It was pretty great. Trump did so in 2012.
Yep, I saw these numbers on the way in.
2012, Obama received 49,000 votes because he wasn't really running against
So
anybody.
they listed the numbers of incumbent presidents and what they got in the primaries
Right.
for numbers here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, so I went on to the Secretary of State's office this morning to check it out. So with 83% of the vote in, Trump had 120,000. So that means by the end of when they're completed voting, he should have almost 3 times more votes than Obama got in the same type of election cycle. That's huge. That
Yep.
means people are angry
Not only
and
that,
psyched.
If you take a look at all of the incumbents, that list went all the way back to, I believe, Reagan.
Yeah.
As far as the incumbent dealing with a primary for his party, Trump more than doubled any of the records
Yep.
as far as people showing up just to make sure that everybody knows
Yep.
that we're for Trump.
I said I was there with my boys, and I said to them, the way you're growing up isn't normal. You're growing up with a Red Sox win, the Patriots win, and your president fills stadiums. Like, this is not normal. Your life only goes downhill from here with the
Yeah.
reality, but
Yeah, the millennials will never
exciting time for
understand
them.
New England without Super Bowls or World Series and
Getting this close to the pennant.
the pain of watching that ball go through Buckner's legs in
Oh
1980.
yeah. I remember that scene. That was pretty
But we're
great.
stronger for it. They have it too easy.
Yes. We should make them lose. That's a very good point, Victoria. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you want, but there was, when we were in line, it was what
Yeah,
happened was Joe Alexander was supposed to come on tonight, and I was sitting there with Victoria.
I love Joe.
I do too. So Joe says, "Oh, I can't. I got to go to the Hillsborough County thing." So I says, "Oh." So I don't have a guest. So Victoria's there. Victoria, what are you doing? Then you said you wanted to come up and talk about something, but I
Yeah,
don't
so
know.
Manchester Proud. Are you guys following this
Okay, yeah, I
Manchester
don't know
Proud
what it
thing?
is. That
eh?
was it. Okay, go
Are you
ahead.
following this at all?
I haven't.
So Manchester Proud. It's the bane of my existence. No. So it started, I think it started with people that, the Manchester School District is a mess. Everyone knows it's a mess. It's people talk about it when they're talking about moving here. The school system isn't strong. And so these people came together and they thought that they could maybe create something that would help the school system. So it was created by some business people and some community leaders and other people, and it sort of took on a life of its own. And they
So
did
when they
this,
say Manchester Proud, is this like rah team kind of
yeah,
proud? Okay.
Yeah. And I went to some of the meetings, and honestly, like as a grown-up attending a meeting, I was like, I've never seen anything like it. Everything was done on Post-its. Your feedback was put on Post-its and put on the wall, and that's not how you
Oh.
collect information.
That's how you.
You can't 91A it, right?
No, that's how you drive information.
That's how
don't
you
collect
lose
it.
information. Like that's how you skew things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They weren't public as in televised. I had in the early meetings I had people that said to me that they attended and they were actually told, kind of keep it close to the vest. We don't want people to know what we're talking about. And so they created they recently, released their view of what they would like the education system like in the city. And it's like a big fluff piece. It's basically a marketing piece. Like if I had to say, what was the outcome? The outcome was to present something that looks like a marketing tool to try to get people to think that we're going to do things to improve education in the city so that they will move in here and fill our buildings,
So it's public
whatever.
opinion, not necessarily.
Yeah, and
any-
it's all the catchphrases, the buzzwords of today, right? So as a legislator, I passed the bill for a play-based kindergarten. And with the help of, we got it through the House 328 to 8. It was like huge support from the legislation,
Yep.
right? And it's been leading the nation in play-based learning now. And when I was with teachers and we're talking about it, and I'm finding out that it's doing so much more than we ever thought it was going to do for education. And they're seeing less behavioral issues in the classrooms because of it, because kids are kids. And they're not being,
They wanna
don't have to
play.
sit in their seats. But they're also learning more because they're learning in the way that they know how to learn. It's not just playing, they're learning. Like, play is work for kids. Like, that's their work. The work of childhood is play. And they're learning more and they're retaining more information because of the way the information is being discovered by them or delivered by the teachers.
Yep.
And they're so involved in all of it. So, if we extend that K through 3, that's going to do a lot for our education system. Nothing about play-based is in this thing at all. And when we're talking about that also frees up preschool, because I don't know if you know how preschool has become sort of kindergarten. Kindergarten's become the new first grade, and these stressors on the kids are taking their toll on the teachers, the parents, and the kids, right? So the play-based learning has actually done a lot for social emotional development too, because kids are learning how to problem solve with their peers again.
Right.
They're learning how to have arguments and settle them. They're learning how to talk to other people that they might be in conflict with. And those are the things that were taken away by not having socialization, free time, creative play, and they're back in the classroom, right? So we hear all these buzzwords about social emotional development, but all you really have to do is push those programs aside and get back to the basics and let them play and socialize from the youngest ages, and they will bring those skills forward, right?
Right.
Not in there. They're talking about competency-based stuff. They're talking about getting rid of leveling. They're talking about all these buzzwords that are current buzzwords that have nothing to do with education. We had a 30-person brawl that went viral on social media at Memorial High School this week. We had another brawl with girls fighting at Hillside that went viral. I found out about it because it was on Twitter, not even from somebody from Manchester. Like, that's how fast this information spreads. We've got teachers that don't know what to do with the kids in their classroom that are so disruptive and won't behave because they don't have the support of their administrators backing them up saying, yes, this child cannot be in this classroom because he's a danger. How do we fix this? How do we give this family the support? None of that is happening. The Department of Education is trying to provide programs like Resilient Kids, which actually works with the families. It's an after-school program that supports these families and the kids. We've got programs like trauma-induced care that helps teachers recognize trauma, kids that are living in trauma because of the opioid addiction or other things that are happening in their home, and teaching the teachers how to recognize that and how to work with those children. None of that is in there. And if we don't change the environment that these kids are learning in and make it a safe place for them, and a place where the teachers are supported when they're dealing with these
Or a
issues in the
safe
classroom.
place for the teachers.
Right. Then none of the other fluff matters. It just doesn't. There's nothing in there about a classical education. There's nothing in there about a citywide curriculum. There's none of the stuff in there that actually matters to kids, families, and teachers.
So there's a system, there's a lot of meetings, town meetings and things you can go to, and I'm going to forget what it's called, but it has a name. And what they do, and I bet you saw this too, is if an outside group wants to come in and lead a group of, say, people in Manchester into a specific conclusion, what they do is they separate them into groups. Mm-hmm. And then they come up with these Post-its and they say, well, what do you think about this subject? And what they do is they've already decided
The outcome.
the outcome, so they pick, like you said, X, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they already were going to pick X. They just needed somebody to actually
So
say
like
it.
focus groups, but they have a predetermined outcome.
They have a predetermined outcome, so they take X from you and Y from him and say, see, it was all our collective idea.
Right.
And it sounds like, and if you're ignorant as to the methodology, you think, wow, they looked at all our ideas and we're part of this. No, you're not. They
Right.
knew what they wanted to
Yep.
conclude before you sat down.
And the worst part of this is this new school board that was just
Who is
elected
running it?
seems to be all in. They're business people. Arthur Sullivan's one of the people that are running it. And like I said, I'm sure it was well-intentioned and well-meaning, but what they delivered is not anything that's going to help our kids or our
Right.
education system. And the mayor's all in. The school board is all in. The superintendent is all in. He's allowed which is really disappointing to me. And he's allowed them to put these huge signs. Have you seen, there's one over Elm Street, a banner that says Manchester Proud. Now you're going to notice them that I've said it. They're on every school property. And I asked how it got there. And one of the people that is involved in Manchester Proud said the superintendent allowed him to put the signs there.
Who paid for
it?
them?
Manchester Proud. They raised money to help education, but they've actually just used the money to lobby.
Where are they raising the money from? Like, who's donating? I
Go ahead.
I don't know.
You're choking there.
Businesses, I know, but I don't know who. But to have an outside organization allowed to put their signs on school property to try to get people to be behind this plan
Right.
sets a very dangerous precedent. I have a great plan for education. You just heard some of it. I think I should have signs on all the public schools to let people can know they should come talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I totally understand.
Plus, the
It's
school
not-
board might as well just resign if they adopt this plan, because there's nothing left for them to do. Right? If they're going to adopt this, they've already given up curriculum instruction. We don't have a committee for that anymore. It's just done without the parents even having a say in it. They should just
Can't
give it
they-
up and save the
can't they ever
taxpayers
just-
the money.
One of the problems, my wife's a teacher, but she teaches special ed, so she's not as adversely influenced by it. But one thing she's noticed over the years is either it comes from Washington or it comes from someplace else. They say, well, this isn't working, so they try a
Yep.
brand new system.
Yep.
They don't even let that take effect.
No, and I will tell
And
you
then
the
they
worst.
say, we got to have a new brand new
Yeah,
system.
and the worst thing that happened, part of the Manchester plan is to, right now we graduate, and I think 90.5% of our students graduate from Manchester. They want to have 100%. Well, the problem with that is with the No Child Left Behind, which was horrible for teachers and for students, that pretty much pushes people through the system. So even though if you look at our scores, yeah, we're graduating 90% of the students, half of them are illiterate. Half of them, less than that, can't do math. So we're graduating kids, but they're not prepared. So wouldn't it be better to have 100% rate of kids that are prepared for their next step in life than just graduation?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It should be quality, not quantity.
Yeah, so passing them through and
I
giving
think
them a
that's
diploma.
actually one of the things, the biggest mistakes we made in the legislature, and I voted against it, was requiring children to finish high school.
At 18. They have to go till they're 18.
Right.
now they have to go to 18,
Yeah,
to
and they
18.
can still
Yeah.
drop out.
Yeah, it should have been 16.
Should have been
should-
16 because there are a
should-
lot of 16-year-olds that are done with school. They
They're
want to get a
done,
job. They want to get out there, and as long as they can show that they have a path going forward, they have a
Well-
job, an apprenticeship, whatever they have that gets them to go forward, they should be able
Because
to.
especially boys, there's a lot of young men that can't just sit there and try to learn
And then
Spanish.
what are the teachers supposed to do with a 17-year-old, 6'1" boy that doesn't want to be in that school?
Right.
Like, what are they going to do with them?
Right.
Right? Isn't it better if they have a mentorship program or something that gets them out of the building and on
Go
their way?
sweep up at a cotton picking garage and learn how to start turning
Plumbing,
wrenches.
electricity, like
Plumbing,
those
anything.
things are all great things.
You know, yeah, we're really hurting our kids by not.
Yeah. And the 6-year-old number too, like they have to be in full day at 6. We don't even have full day kindergarten in some of our districts. So those kids that are just turning 6 and they're in half day kindergarten, what are you going to force them into first grade? Like the numbers don't even make sense.
Right.
Yeah. It's a
Yes.
mess. So that was what had me, because I
That's
had just
what-
driven by a sign and it made me angry. I think there was one on the corner there. That's why.
Oh.
Manchester
oh.
Proud signs. When I saw you, I was like, we need to talk about Manchester Proud. We need to really talk about education in the scene. That's the problem. This is another thing where it's just more fluff and it's not going to do anything to actually improve the education system in our city.
Right. Yep. That's what we do. We throw money at stuff and hope things get better, but it's not.
And they want to have their own fundraising. So like
What?
I said, why should the school board even be there? Because you're going to have someone else that's taking care of money and putting money into things that the school board won't have any say in.
What authority do they have, and where do they get the
They have
authority?
no authority except what's being given to them by the elected officials. These are not elected people. It's not an elected group. It's not a board. So the people that we elected that are saying, yeah, go ahead, have actually given up the things that we elected them to do. That's why I say we should get rid of the school board if they adopt this, give the money back to to the taxpayers for their stipends. Some of these school board members are getting $25,000 insurance plans. Give that back to the taxpayers. And if that's the route we're going to go, that's the route we're going to go. But there's no sense to have them on the board if they're going to relinquish their control.
Wow. The thing is I'm very familiar with something called Agenda 21, and that's how that works.
Yep.
They create these citizen boards, and they have this grand plan, and they do it exactly the same way. They put everybody in little separate rooms or separate tables, and they brainstorm ideas, all of which were already determined before they ever sat down. And eventually they have this plan.
It's basically like a parallel board to the elected board, right? But they don't have to answer to anybody.
It's the same thing in this.
Yep.
And this planning thing, what they're doing is they're having an unelected board that just kind of comes in and starts taking over your planning for your town or city. And all of a sudden the people that are supposed to be doing that are like kind of left on the sidelines.
And the people that are in the room that are making the decisions, they're community members, they're business leaders, and I'm sure they had people pitch this stuff to them and it all sounds good, but they don't actually know what that means in practice.
Right.
They don't know what it means in the classroom. They don't know what it means to these kids or to the teachers. And like I said, when your classrooms, I sat with teachers and spoke with teachers just really recently. They were saying if a child is disruptive, they leave that child there and move everybody else out. Well, when you're doing that in elementary school, do you know how long it takes to resettle those kids that you just had to move out of the classroom because this one disruptive person is now going to stay there with the guidance counselor until they get calmed down? And that's what we do. That is how we solve these problems. So kids aren't getting the education they need.
So
they don't feel safe in their classrooms.
So you're telling me if the probably one of my grandkids, because I got one of them that's like that. So my little grandson loses his mind, which he does, and they would take all the other kids out of the class?
Yeah, so when my son was in kindergarten, it used to happen to the class beside him. There was a student and that would kick up a fuss. The guidance counselor would come in. The kindergarten teacher would take them and all their stuff at their centers, their little crayons and everything, move them to another classroom and leave the guidance counselor and that student. And it happened almost daily. And it was half-day kindergarten, so by the time they leave...
Why wouldn't they just pull that little kid out?
They're leaving the disruptive
our
person
day.
in a confined room. Right.
It would have happened once.
Right,
Because you would have been
exactly.
dragged out and then your parents would have been called. And that's another part of the problem, though. In a lot of these cases, the administrators are trying to solve these problems without involving the parents. So then they say, well, the parents aren't involved in it, the parents don't care. And it's often not that the parents don't care, but the parents aren't brought into the conversation until this has happened a lot. Right? And by that time, the parents are like, what do you mean my little darling is disruptive? You've never called me before. Well, it's been happening for a long time, but they were never brought into the conversation. Parents should be brought into the conversation the first time.
That is ideally true, but you know as well as I do, there's a lot of parents in the city of Manchester that are, drug addicts.
There are.
And they just want their kid out of their hair.
But there's usually another caregiver. So if the person is an addict and they're incapable of caring, there's usually a grandparent or somebody else that is the caregiver that would step into that role.
Right.
Right, because they're not able to take care of their child.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they did that all the time, but it doesn't seem to be the case. But yeah, it's not a great situation. We have. To me, if you had strong children, the school system wouldn't really matter that much.
Well, that depends. Because
Right.
don't
So-
forget, they're with the school system now for 6.5
Right.
hours a day.
But if
That's
the-
more
if the
face
school-
time than they get with their parents.
I get that, but if the school system was halfway decent, which I'm sure it is, you've got a lot of very educated teachers. If the home life was good, you'd have strong little kids going into school, less disruption, and
But it takes one child. So we do have great teachers. We've got great teachers that aren't supported by their administrators.
Right.
And if you've got that one child that's disruptive and you don't have an administrator that comes in, takes that child out, unless the rest of the kids feel safe, your classroom is a mess.
Right.
Your classroom becomes the trauma for the kid, right?
Right.
My son, one of my sons, had a child in the class and was just like that. And I think he was in 4th grade at the time.
Yeah.
And he started having stomach issues and we didn't know why. And we found out down the road that it was because this kid was so disruptive. He swore at the teacher. He threw things around the classroom. And because my son was a little bit bigger, he sort of defended the other kids and he put himself in that space to sort of take the heat and tell the kid to knock it off. Well, it became such a big deal for him that he was nervous going to school, and he finally told us about it. The kid like laid in front of the door so that the principal couldn't even come into the room, was telling the teacher to F off. And so if you're 9 and that's your school day, how do you learn?
Right.
It doesn't matter if your home life is great. If you're spending 6.5 hours in that environment, there's no way to come out of that unscathed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And we do have, the union protects some bad people that are in our districts.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot, but if you're one kid in that classroom, you like I said, you're under the influence of these other people more than you are your parents once you get into school age. 6.5 hours FaceTime with an adult is more than they get with their parents.
Yep. Yeah, I know. It's
That's another reason to delay them going in. My kids didn't go to preschool. They always say they were
But how
homeschooled for
much is
preschool because they
change-
have their own value system by the
if
time they
that
get
is
there.
the fundamental problem, which a lot of it is, how does rearranging the curriculum or rearranging the seats on the Titanic make any difference at all?
It doesn't. That's why if we've got the play-based stuff that starts in preschool, right, and these children are learning how to solve these problems on their own. We had teachers that came forward and said, with the play-based curriculum, I'm referring less kids to special education. That's huge.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
huge. That means that these kids are learning how to take care of their own behaviors, and they're not being sent out of the classroom because they don't know how to self-regulate. And that comes with play and being out of your seat and just we are social by nature, right? So if you're sitting there looking at a piece of paper and you're 5 years old and that's your day, that can be really stressful. You can get anxiety from that. But if you're face to face with a peer or an adult and you're interacting, it's much more calming for a lot of kids, and especially boys who cannot sit still that long. A lot of kids get diagnosed with ADHD just because they cannot do what's expected in this environment.
It's actually kind of interesting because I studied with the Seventh-day Adventists for a while, and I forget the woman who founded it, but her version of learning was, I forget what the age was. I forget a lot. So I forget what the age was.
But that means you remember a lot and you just get rid of the other stuff.
Yeah, I get rid of the fluff. So it was around 10 or 12. She wouldn't even try to teach boys anything until they started calming, until they were, out of that, constantly having to move and break things and jump up and down and play baseball or run around.
But they're
climb
learning when they're
trees.
doing that stuff,
Yes,
right?
they are.
Legos. You can get a boy who can't sit still for 5 minutes. Put Legos in front of him and he'll sit there for an hour building.
You're right.
He'll sit there for an hour. It's all of his attention. And he won't be stressed out about it. It's where he wants to be, and he can build amazing things,
Right.
right?
But it's her premise was that there's a certain age where boys, you're just hurting them by forcing them to sit still and learn. I mean, girls you can because they don't have that kind of
Actually,
mindset.
someone said that to me today. They said we have an education system that is geared all around girls and how girls learn, and we expect boys to fit into that mold, and they can't.
No.
Right?
No,
and
they can't.
It's not all girls. I've met girls. I mean, I was a tomboy. I didn't sit still very much when I was little.
Yeah,
but
there's always variations.
it's not all of them. But yeah, and there's boys that would sit there all day. But
Right.
for the most part, boys tend to have more physical energy and need to get up and out and move
Yep.
around, or they become a problem. So you have teachers sometimes that use taking away recess as a punishment when that is the child that probably
That
needs
is-
2 recesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Get them outside to play more.
Right. I was actually
So see, we can solve all the problems. We just need to do it in the right way.
Yes.
Then they'll learn the other stuff,
right.
right? We've solved it all tonight, and that's the end of the show because we've solved all the problems of the world today. Right?
Wait, have we got started? We all of them?
Some of them.
We still have last time we solved the problem. We have to elevate the city,
Yes, that was the
Right?
best freaking idea I've ever had, I think.
and then we're gonna be elevating the education now to meet
Right.
that rate in a different way.
So So you're saying we should take those kids who can't control themselves and put them in blimps?
I'm not saying this at all. For the record, I did not say put children in blimps and send them into space.
I didn't
the
say
record.
space.
Air.
Air. I tethered. I'm not.
Tethered. We're
I'm-
going to tether.
I'm
We're not tethering children.
I'm not a barbarian.
I was almost not in trouble
Victoria.
on this show. And if they're really bad, you start shooting it with BBs.
Well, I wouldn't do that. You might miss and hit the rope, and then they're not tethered. You know, you can't have them floating away to Nova
No, that'd
Scotia
be
or something.
really bad.
Yeah, you don't want to do that to the people in
No.
Nova
Did
Scotia.
you see the snow in Newfoundland?
Newfoundland? No.
Yeah. So we've got relatives from Newfoundland, and
Well, this
they
was a couple weeks ago, right?
yeah, and they were posting on Facebook like the amount of snow they had. They have special plows, like they're tall, probably like a couple stories high, and it pushes the snow aside, and people are standing there, and the snow just went on and on and on.
Oh,
and they were-
really?
yeah. It was
Wow.
crazy, and they would only the stores would be open for only certain hours a day, so they could go get food and stuff. It was crazy, nothing like we've ever seen here.
I was up there this summer with my favorite wife, and she's so cool.
I'm hoping that's your current wife.
I've only had one.
Okay,
though.
good.
40 years.
That's good.
No, well, she's got Stockholm syndrome, really. If you really,
Is he going home with you tonight? Okay, yeah, that's good. 'Cause I don't think he's getting in his house.
again,
The doghouse is going to be
That's-
tethered, and he's going to be floating, elevated.
He usually
Elevated
doesn't do that
doghouse.
to Brenda more than once a show, and he's up to 3 this time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's actually a great idea.
What?
We actually found a really good purpose for your blimp.
A doghouse?
A doghouse
For
bad husbands.
bad
We
husbands.
tether them.
there's
Right.
no such thing as a bad husband.
That's not her approval look.
How about
I've seen that look before.
misbehaving?
Looks familiar.
I bet you have.
Yeah, tell him to come on in. Max is here.
We
So
learned that at like prenatal school, or pre-marriage school. We learned that.
pre-marriage school.
Yeah,
Oh,
pre-matrimony school.
You had a pre-matrimony school?
Yeah, don't you have to go to that before you get married? They make you go take
No,
courses
they
on how to be
don't.
married. Sure.
You didn't have to do counseling with your pastor before you got married?
Well, now we know what went wrong.
Oh, we only got 2 chairs.
That's
we need
all
an
right.
extra chair.
Hi, how are you,
Extra
Max?
chair.
Good
there an
to
extra-
see you. I can slide out if you want.
No,
I'll take
no,
a break
I
and I'll
don't.
slide
I don't.
out.
I'm very fond of you.
No, he's getting one.
You got one?
Yep.
Is that Jason?
Yeah, Jason.
Have you been on this show before, Jason? Oh, yeah. Okay. I can't remember.
Jason Janverin's been on the show, I think, once before.
At least once, right? We were in committee today. We got to
Jason.
we got to listen to. We were so lucky. We got to listen to how many hours of doctor-assisted suicide?
They were actually, Representative Keynes actually showed up at the reception we were at, I believe at like 5:45. And
Oh.
she said you just had finished, so yeah, they were there quite a ways.
Yeah, I
quite a
got
while
an
today.
excuse. I had to go pick up my grandson, so I bailed out after a couple hours.
You know what I've always thought on doctor-assisted suicide? It's your body. Your body doesn't belong to the state. Your life doesn't belong to the state. So, government's role is to protect you from the wrongdoing of others, protect you from the harm of other people. But if you decide you want to end your own life, I don't agree with that. I don't think that it's right. But who's to say what condition someone's in at the end of their life? They might have a medical condition where it's last few months of their life is just extreme pain.
I get that. In theory, I almost agree with you. But the fact of the matter is what would happen is at first it would start out being used for people who are in extreme pain and wanted to end their life. And eventually it would be a ending of life out of convenience for the other people around them.
Yeah, I really worry about the elderly and situations
The elderly
like
would be
that,
abused. It would not. It's like all good things, or not all good things, but a lot of things. They sound good in principle, but when you put them in practice, it would be abused. It'd increase the suicide rate. We already have a high suicide
Wait,
rate.
so are these the same people that want to have gun control because of suicides?
I probably, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I
But
would
they
ask-
want physician-assisted
That's not
suicide.
nice, Victoria. Don't point out hypocrisy.
Yes. We don't point hypocrisy out on
So
this
you know
show,
how to kill the bill.
Victoria
You know how to
Sullivan.
kill the bill. You say that we agree, but the I mean, I can't even say I'm going to get
Yeah,
in
you
really big trouble
probably-
if I say this.
Anyway, so our newest guests are Jason Janvrin and Max Abramson, the state rep from.
And we're Facebook Live, and people on Facebook
from the
can't see. You see my
Seacoast.
phone there?
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
How you doing?
They can't see you.
They can hear him. So Max wanted to come on. He's been asking me to come on and talk about tactical voting. Correct?
Right.
So go for it.
So let's say,
Victoria, can you move your microphone a little closer to Sir
I will
Matt?
share.
thank
Share.
you, thank you. So you and I know because we serve in the state house. We deal. I mean, I think we were all warned that it's like a mental insane asylum up there, and that the Democrats are crazy. I had to deal with them today, and I just kept my mouth shut and just listened to the insanity. But you have.
Yeah.
You have about 16 states that never go Republican. You've got, 170 U.S. House districts that never go Republican. You've got about 2,000 legislative districts around the country that never go Republican, and you've got tens of thousands of other.
We get quite a few districts in New Hampshire that never go Republican,
Right,
too.
correct. And it basically it's because the money machine that the people make their money off of Democrat politics. People in places like Portsmouth and Exeter, there you have large concentrations of not just lawyers, but you have administrators and government contractors and people have these phony environmental scams similar to Solyndra and whatnot. The people are making all the money off of government subsidies and handouts. Had at the polling place yesterday during the presidential primary, we had people holding the signs for some of the candidates, and they were all paid to be there. There's not a single one who's there because they believe in it. They're all
Were you paid?
government employees. The,
No,
the
I
Democrat
forgot
sign
to
holders
take
are
my
all
check.
Right.
so they make money off Democrat politics. So you have a lot of districts that are maybe they're either not that conservative, or they dislike the Republican Party, or they dislike Donald Trump, or there's just the makeup of the district is very different. So we tend to think of, okay, Democrats are nuts. They ruin every city, county, and state they take over. Every high crime ghetto in America is run by Democrats. They've all been run into the ground. Every recession since the 1930s has started under a Democrat congressional majority. So it's kind of their anti-business, reckless spending, reckless taxes, reckless borrowing, stopping energy exploration, and they just micromanage everything to death.
Right.
The business community, they regulate them to death. 6, 8, 10-year long permit times. I mean, they just ruin economies. They ruin whole cities. So, but if you realize you live in a district like that, and maybe you like Republicans, for example, but if you realize that what they do in other first past the post countries is they bring in another political party, maybe that's socially liberal or socially libertarian or something else, and then that, who knows, the Pirate Party, something else, something that can compete with the Democrats in that district, college towns, whatever, cities, and they'll compete with the local Socialist Party, and they'll cost them a few seats if the voters would rather have, I don't know, in a college town, the Pirate Party instead of,
Socialist Democrat
right.
Party.
So, even though you might be a Republican, Jason might be a Republican, any number of people would be
Okay,
Republicans.
so
who'd say,
so how would this actually go into practice, say in Dover? I'm pretty sure Dover goes Democrat every single time because he gets all the
and
college kids.
we had taxpayers come in, they're getting raked over the coals. They're all like, $26, $28, $30 per thousand in property taxes. Just found out my own school district's $21,500 per year per student. Winnicott's like $27,000 a year per student. Special ed's anywhere from $130,000 to $600,000 a year per student. And you'll get one kid who's already terminal and they're not going to live till 30. And taxpayers have to make an investment of $3, $4, $5, $6 million to run them through the school system till they're 21. And
Yeah, but I know, I'm trying to get back to,
they're
because
just
you wanted to come on
ripping-
and talk about tactical
Okay,
voting. So
so-
how would tactical voting work in Dover?
So you might have, let's just say, the Libertarian Party, or the Pirate Party, or the Constitution Party, or something, they organize in those districts, some of those districts, and then they flip a few of those districts, not from Democrat to Republican, but from Democrat to Pirate
Libertarian.
Party or whatever.
Right.
But you have to have, what they do in other countries is they have minor parties and they just focus on regional, local issues, and it's kind of
So
Scottish National Party, Irish National, this.
So the basic theory is you go into Dover and maybe even Republicans invest in it, but libertarians, because libertarian mindset is pretty consistent, if explained correctly, with college-age mentality. So if you concentrate on spending money in like place like Dover, if all you did was flip 3 Democratic seats to Libertarian, you're still a lot better off than if you just gave up on the whole district and let it go Democrat.
Even if you're, totally straight, business conservative, stuffy Republican, even if that's what you are, you could, if you look at your district and it were, say, the Pirate Party versus the Democrats in that particular college town, and you say, well, wait a minute, we're going to lose our home, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year in property taxes.
Right.
We can't afford to keep our home. At least, excuse me, at least the Pirate Party isn't corrupt like the Democrats. So you've got the center of Manchester, and maybe the Republican Party hasn't been that responsive in Manchester Ward 3, 4, 5, kind of this area around Elm Street. And so you almost never see a Republican get elected here. In fact, you pretty much never see Republicans get elected in 3, 4, and 5 at the center of the city. So they have political parties that are just locals, and they get together and they say, well, we don't want to be stuck with Democrat aldermen, Democrat school board members, Democrat legislators who are just, we've got no representation because they have a rigged primary process. So that we don't even have elected officials. We have basically union officials, lawyers, big city party bosses, organized crime, administrators, all the people who make their money off of Democrat politics. They're appointing your elected officials. I had a friend who lived in Massachusetts in an entrenched Democrat district. He went in to talk to his legislator. The guy finally comes out after an hour or two and tells him to go F himself, literally right to his face, and then just walks off because he knows he's not going to get voted out. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So you have a place like Massachusetts, it won't go, say, Democrat to Republican. You can't flip those districts there.
So you get 2 minutes. So how do you propose to get those districts in Manchester to flip to something else? Because it's a lot of the voting is just people I've always voted this way.
So I used to live in Manchester, Ward 5. So I used to live in the center of Manchester. And it was, one of those hopeless things. But it's got to be the people who live in that area getting together and saying, what do we really need in terms of representation? We'd have voter turnout of like 19-20%, but we had almost no Republicans in the whole area. And when I went in Doorbelled, I was the first Republican ever that they'd ever seen who came through and doorbelled their area at the time.
That's Lisa Freeman's ward. So
and I
she's a
said-
Republican, and she won twice in that ward.
And I said, I'm kind of a libertarian Republican. And I'm explaining the corruption. I'm going door to door talking to people, and they've never heard anyone ever say, yeah, the system's corrupt. Yeah, the good old boy network and prison industry and,
Right.
government union officials and whatnot, they're just stealing your money. And I'm explaining the scams, and they're like, well, they already know about that. And now they realize there's something they can do about it.
Right.
But what does the third party do? I don't think I understand how the third party helps.
So
that.
like in Britain, all the college districts go labor every single year, and there's nothing you can do, and it's completely hopeless. However, Britain's Lib Dems come along, and they have a whole platform that responds to what college students are concerned about. That's on their radar, so to speak. And in 2010, the Lib Dems were able to flip every single college district in the whole country, every single one. So Labor basically ended up losing over 40 seats. And
I think actually this election, because we only have a couple seconds left, but I think this election, that is doable. I'll tell you why, is because I know a lot of Democrats, and a lot of Democrats are not as socially off the wall or socialists, which is what they're getting from the
Right.
DC.
But
and the
you have,
presidential, well, let me finish. So if you ran as not even a libertarian, but call yourself a Democrat, Republican, or some other name, say, no, I'm just going back to what the party used to be. So we got a new name because the Democrat Party's been hijacked by the elitists. And if you ran as that, I bet you'd get a lot of blue
Yeah, a lot
collar.
of them say like I'm a JFK Democrat.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
How they describe themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had Paul Bissard. He was in my second term. I don't know if he was a firefighter here in Manchester.
Yeah.
After 2 months up at the legislature, he ran as a Democrat because he's always been a Democrat. He was in the union. He's a union guy.
and
right?
I tell you, I take Democrats I know in my district and I say, go to the Communist Party's website, and they're like, no, yeah, your party's been taken over by commies. Why do you think you've got 20 million Democrats, lifelong Democrats, who have left the party? Half of them vote Republican, half of them just stay home.
Right.
What do you think? And finally, some of them I get them to go to the Communist Party's website, and it's right there. All the crazy left-wing stuff, the division, the Women's March, the anti-gun, everything. It all starts with Communist Party USA, and then it goes out to the DNC and Huffington Post and Talking Points Memo and NPR and all the others and Hollywood. And then they realize, oh, this is all centrally controlled. This is all centrally controlled messaging. It is a big scam coalition.
Yeah,
But
it
you
is.
have to have someone who will go door to door, go to their door. Somebody who has a chance of winning. Go door to door
Just to
and
open
wake
their
them up.
eyes. Yeah.
And that's not happening in the cities because people in the cities are just like, it's all corrupt. I don't see what It's big cities like Chicago and Detroit and every high crime ghetto in America is run by Democrats. And people they don't make the connection. They just show up and they vote Democrat and they don't know why. The shootings are
Yeah.
out of control and drug problems and you got needles all over the street and homeless people in tent cities.
Max.
And they can't.
We gotta go. Jason, it was nice to have you here.
Sure.
I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
We're getting some snow tomorrow, so be careful.
State of the state. What?
We're getting some snow tonight and tomorrow, so
Yes.
be careful.
And Victoria wants me to be up in a balloon or something above my house.
I think your wife's gonna want you there when you get home.
Yeah, probably.
I think it's more likely to be droning on.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks. We'll see you guys next
Thank
week.
you for having me.